This is Nick Wright. How was your weekend?
Great.
Yeah?
Great
Good
football.
to see you, brother.
I got a little cold, mate.
Don't do that.
This is so good. Can we just
got a
sit
little
in the
cold.
moment of,
okay.
yes,
Yeah.
we want to, he's going to have a cold for the foreseeable future, but it's good. We have a great show today. We had a big weekend. What?
Bet you he doesn't miss a day of work, though.
Oh, hilarious. You're so funny with your cold jokes. 8 seconds in. One of the best weekends on the sports calendar just happened. We're going to get to all of it. Let us start with Tom Brady and the Patriots hosting the Chargers. Hey, many thought the Chargers were the better team from top to bottom. Patriots clearly did not agree. They dominated this one from start to finish. They won 41-28. Tom Brady threw for 343 yards and a touchdown, while Sony Michel ran for 129 yards and 3 touchdowns in this one. The Patriots win, they advance, they are moving on. But let's stick with this game first. CC, how were the Pats able to dominate against the Chargers?
It was very, very basic. It's about numbers. Football's a game of numbers. Last week we talked about Gus Bradley, came up with the great defensive scheme. I think 57 out of 58 plays, they played 7 defensive backs. So you know coming into New England, we had Bart Scott sit here. Bart Scott said, he said something. I'm going to tell him, write it down, because I didn't think they could be successful with 7 defensive backs playing against New England. I didn't think New England was going to play 50 snaps where they're going to throw the ball. If they're going to throw the ball 50 times, then that's the perfect type of defense to be able to set up. But you can't do it the whole game. And when they came out in this undersized lineup, which it is undersized, and New England does not have a ginormous offensive line. But what they do have is James Devlin, probably the best blocking fullback we have in the NFL. There's only a handful of these guys.
One of the only actual fullbacks left in the NFL.
They're like dinosaurs. So when you see one of these guys coming, get you that picture I have on my...
Get a neck roll.
Get you a neck roll.
Get ready for some contact.
They're not going to throw the ball to him. He's getting ready to pound you into submission. That's what he does. Right now at this point in his career, regardless of what people want to say, Rob Gronkowski, number one thing he does, end of the line blocker. That's the number one asset that he provides to this New England offense. So you combine that with 5 offensive linemen. Let me have Devlin and Rockhead Gronk. So now we got 7 big guys running against 7 defensive backs, or 6 in 1, because part of the time they had a linebacker in there.
No, and sometimes it was 8. Because they had a second tight end out there sometimes. I mean, it was so old school. And I know Brady actually, you're going to say, oh, he threw the ball 44 times. Well, yeah, technically that's true. But a lot of those passes were runs, essentially. This is what was so frustrating watching the game, see? And this is what confused me, because I know how smart Anthony Lynn is. I know how smart Gus Bradley is. And I didn't understand why they didn't make an adjustment that seemed obvious watching on television. That when Sony Michel was in the game, they were going to run the football. When James White was in the game, they were going to pass the football. I picked up on that late in the first quarter. It was, and I think, I don't have it, I think the numbers indicate that that was exactly what they did, and the Chargers had no answer. The Chargers had a defensive game plan as if they've never seen the Pats play. As if they were letting Tom Brady just play catch. It was and I know they play a soft zone coverage, so that is schematically what they do, but Brady was never under duress. And the Pats, it looked to me like they were looking at what the personnel was allowing for them to do and said, okay, we will do exactly what you're going to let us do, and we'll get 6 yards at a time.
Or they did, and they said to him, hey, we did this against the Ravens and it worked. Let's do the exact same thing. I'm sure it'll work because our defense is set, even though they have one of the deepest defensive rosters in the league. CC.
Yeah, I didn't think that Gus Bradley and them, Gus Bradley, man, he's done a lot on the defensive side. Great game plan, too, going against Baltimore, a team that they had played within the last 3 weeks, so they were a little more familiar with them. With New England, it wasn't as if it was a bad scheme. It's all they had, with their linebackers being banged up. So I'm not going to be sitting here saying, oh, man, Anthony Lynn, the Chargers staff, man, they got out-coached. That's all they had. They were thin at the linebacker spot, and they thought as far as with New England running the ball, they thought they could put more speed on the field, and they would be able to get around the blockers. That part was not effective. So I'm not going to be like the Chargers went into this game with the wrong game plan. At the end of the season, when you got guys injured, sometimes it's a matter of what can you do with the players you have, and that's all the Chargers had. They didn't have an answer to what New England was going to do with Gronk and Devlin in the game.
And thanks to our great statistician, Dusty, 35 of the 36 plays that White was on the field for ended up being passing plays. Like, you could tell what the Pats were going to do based on the personnel that they had. And the other thing that happened in this game was the two best front seven defensive players for the Chargers, one of them who was the star of the Baltimore game, Melvin Ingram, and Joey Bosa, who's one of the most talented players in the league, they could not get home at all. Brady got hit one time, got sacked 0 times. So the only way that defensive game plan was going to work was if they were getting pressure to Brady with 4, which is what they were trying to do throughout. You saw the Pats having 0 blitzes. You saw the Pats defensively getting pressure and taking chances. The Chargers were not doing that, and they were not able to get home with their star all-pro level defensive line.
But give it to the Patriots. They also played a better game, at least offensively, than we've seen them play in the last couple of weeks. They came out and absolutely dominated against a very good defense. We hadn't seen it. We know they're so great at home, but you haven't seen them play that way where Tom Brady methodically hits everyone, where Sony Michel has lanes to run consistently throughout the game.
Yeah, it's a combination of a couple things. You got to give credit to the Patriots, but it starts with the game plan. That's what we went over before. Starts with the game plan and how we're going to dictate a certain pace to the opposition. Everyone thought New England potentially was going to come out and try to match talent for talent. That's not what they do. They do have talented players, but me and Olivia, who works here on the staff, she went to the game and everything. We're the only 2 people seem like had confidence that New England, it's going to be a matter of James White and Sony Michel. That's all it is. Like that's all it is. And when they can concentrate on that, that's how they can look like a championship football team. You know the reason why? They weren't throwing the ball down the field to Hogan. Philip Dorsett, they had him in a couple little matchups and everything, but these guys in the small role that they play compared to trying to play a major role, that was the difference in these games. They're not real deep at wide receiver. They are a better football team when you put them in a phone booth. You took the pressure off of Brady. So when you talk about a play count, he did throw the ball 44 times, but it was when he wanted it. It's with 34 rushes. Typically, if you don't play effectively, you're gonna have 44 passes and about 20 to 18 rushes because you're not getting the first downs and the productivity.
And it was, I mean, they ran so many plays because in the first half they had more first downs than the Chargers had plays. And when you throw the ball 44 times, but 17 of them are to James White. When he has 15 catches for 97 yards, 15 for 97 makes a lot of sense for a running back running the ball like that. And so his production plus Sony Michel's production, those were all essentially rushing attempts.
All right, we'll talk about your Chiefs in a second, but right now the Patriots are on their way to their 8th straight AFC title game. How impressive is that for Tom Brady after the season he's had this year?
I think it's the most impressive thing besides the 5 Super Bowls. I mean, there's nothing we've seen like this in sports. I've read about Bill Russell. I've read about what he did. I read about John Wooden, know about the talented players, but I've never seen anything like this. Besides him having those 5 Super Bowl championships, being able to do this with the type of consistency at the age he's at in a salary cap free agency era, it's the most impressive stat that he has.
Well, the stats that this match up against are the exact 2 that Cris mentioned. But the only reasons those were able to happen, when Russell was doing it, there were 8, 10, 12 teams in the entire NBA. If you made the playoffs, you were in the conference finals. It's just that 4 of the 8 made it at the beginning of his run. Wooden's UCLA teams, when they made all those Final Fours in a row, had the winning streak, there was only 16 teams in the tournament. So for the Patriots to now, Tom Brady, and this stat's going around everywhere, in his 17 full seasons, has made a conference championship game 13 times. So Drew Brees this year, his completion percentage all-time record, Tom Brady makes a higher percentage of conference championships than Drew Brees completes a pass. It is, I think 13 conference championship appearances is as impressive as the 5 Super Bowls. Like, you know, pick what you think's the most. Like the 5 championships, the 8 trips, the 13 Final Fours, and they could add to those first 2 numbers, again, depending on how they play.
The great thing about it is we don't have to pick the appearances because we do have the Super Bowls.
Right.
That's the way. It's about championships. Yeah, the other number's impressive, but if he happened to start off his career like Elway and he had lost a lot of those numbers are totally different compared to, man, I also won it 5 other times.
Go ahead.
No, just the other theme of the weekend is, man, that bye sure helps.
Yeah.
Teams looked healthier. Teams looked more rested. Like the bye, we said it before during the week. Teams with a bye make the Super Bowl about 40% of the time. Teams that play in the wild card round make it about 6% of the time. The Patriots found their way into a bye this year and made the most of it.
There were a lot of doubters and a lot of naysayers for Tom Brady. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Not me
Coming
and
up.
Olivia.
Nope,
Jenna
not
either.
you and Olivia. I was on board too,
Yeah,
but
Jenna was on
let's
board.
give Olivia some
Yeah,
thoughts
we had to
right
drag
now.
you along.
Olivia!